All right, hi guys. In this video, I'm going to be going through the loops section of the Pairwise curriculum. So you can see here in the TypeScript module, we have these challenges on loops, and I'm going to be going through and solving those challenges in this video to walk through basic looping expressions in TypeScript. Now, looping is a very fundamental operation that you would want to do in a variety of programming languages. And basically what you can do with looping is you can tell a program to repeatedly do something over and over until reaching some condition. For example, you could tell a program to count to 10 using a loop. And that might not seem very useful, but you could also tell it to count to 10 million. Now, this is a little bit more useful because for us humans, it would take a long time to count to 10 million, and we would probably lose track, to be honest. But with the program, you could actually tell a computer to do this, and it would happen in a matter of like less than a second, you could say. So these are the kind of things that you can do with loops, and they are very ubiquitous in different programs that you will find and you will write yourself in the future. So let's go ahead and just dive in and start with the first challenge here. All right, so this is the first challenge. Get the index using a while loop. So we have this array of random things down here, and then we are initializing result to be -1. And what we want to do is we want to write a while loop which can find the index of broom in this random things array. So a while loop is one of the basic looping constructs that you have available to use, and we can create a while loop with the while keyword, and then we have a set of parentheses that provides a condition for which the while loop should run. And then we have a pair of curly brackets, which is the body of the while loop. So what we were saying is while this condition is true, do this code. So whatever's in these brackets, do that. So what we can do here is we can say let index equal 0. And then in the while loop, we can say const item, or let's say const thing equals random things at the current index. So in the first iteration of the while loop, the index will be 0. So here, the index will be 0. And the 0th item in the random things array is chair. So this will become chair in the first iteration of the loop. And then we want to say, basically, if thing is equal to broom, we want to say result is equal to index. So if the thing that we have found at this current index is equal to broom, which is what we're looking for right here, then update result, which is this variable right here, to be the current index. Okay, and so that means that we've found the broom. And when we found the broom, we're done looking for it. And so we want to be finished with the while loop. And that means that we want this condition right here to represent whether or not we have found the broom. And since we're using this result variable to track that, and if we're basically saying that -1 represents the case where we have not found the broom, we can say while result is equal to -1, because it's going to remain -1 until we reach this this condition right here where we have found the broom. And under no circumstances should the index of broom actually be -1, because the array will always have positively indexed items. And also, as a side comment, typically using a -1 value is common to use for things that are not found in arrays like this. So that's why we're initializing it to be -1 here in the first place. All right, so with that, there's only one thing left to do, but I'm going to go ahead and run the code first, and let's see what happens. So as you can see, there's an issue with the code, and it's telling us something about infinite loops being detected. And the code never completes, and we get these errors down here and over here. So what's happening is we're never actually updating the index value. So the index is being set to 0, and then we're looping through here, and we're getting the random thing at index 0, which is chair, and we're checking if it's a broom. It's not. And so then we're coming back and we are repeating the same thing again. But the index never changes, so this just continues on forever. And who knows how many times this is able to loop over and over before the programming environment here somehow figures out that there's an infinite loop and it, let's say, cancels the program. So this is a very dangerous thing, because if you actually were to run an infinite loop like this in your browser or in most other programs, you're just going to either like hog a ton of memory and CPU usage until effectively your OS like halts or just closes that program for you. Or if you're running it in a browser like this, you're just going to see that the page becomes unresponsive and you're going to have to close that page or quit your browser or something like that. So this is a very dangerous thing to use, and it's also worth noting that you want to use while loops a little bit sparingly in your code because of the risk of accidentally introducing an infinite loop in your code. All right, with that said, we want to avoid the infinite loop by coming down here, and we can just say index plus plus. So this will increment the index. This is the same as saying index equals index plus 1. And this will increment the index, and in our case, that's exactly what we want to happen. So if I run the code again, we will see that we do in fact find the broom, and that is how we can write a while loop to solve this challenge. All right, so let's move on to the next challenge. Okay, so here we have a very similar initial set of code here, and in this challenge, we want to use a for loop to find the index of mango in the random things array. So a for loop is another looping construction like a while loop that you can use to usually loop through a list of things, or loop through perform some repeated looping behavior until a condition is met. And this is also a very standard looping construct that you will find like the while loop in many different programming languages. So to create a for loop, we can say for, and then we have a few things to write inside of these parentheses. So we're going to write let I equals 0, and then we're going to say as long as I is less than random things array.length, we want to say I plus plus, and then we'll have a set of brackets to create a body here to write out some code that should happen on each loop of our for loop. All right, so then what this is saying is we're going to start this variable I to be equal to 0, and then as long as I is less than the length of the random things array, we want to increment I on every iteration of the loop. And so then we can say within the body of our loop, we can say if random things at the index of I is equal to mango, then the result is equal to I. So we'll just say the result is equal to the current index, and we won't do anything else. All right, and let's run that code, and we will see that that solves the challenge. Now, there's one more thing to mention here, which is, let's just say we have console.log current index like this, and then here we'll say found the mango. So if I run that code, you'll see that we start looping through. We have current index 0, 1, 2, and then we find the mango, but then we keep looping here. So we still, index 3 is the mango actually, and then we also have index 4 showing up. So what's happening is we find the mango, and then we continue going through this while loop. So you could imagine that in a list like this, that's not really a problem. But let's say this was like thousands of things or like a few million things, and maybe the thing you're looking for is near the start of the array. In that case, you would basically continue looping through the entire array, even though you've already found the thing you're looking for. So how could we avoid this? How could we not keep going through the entire iteration of this for loop? We want to basically break out of this for loop early, and we can do that using the break keyword. So if I use the break keyword like that, you'll see that this finishes after we find the mango, and we don't see any more log statements here. So that's exactly what we want to do. And alternatively, if this was in a function body, you could also return out of the function body, but you would need to be in a function body for that to be valid. Okay, so that's going to do it for this challenge, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here we are in the next challenge, and in this challenge we want to use a while loop or a for loop to build up an array of the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., all the way up to and including 100. So this is just going to give us some more practice writing out these looping structures from scratch. And here we already have a const result array that is initialized for us, and we're logging it out here. So first, let's do this with a while loop. We can say while some condition, and then we want to basically keep pushing numbers into our result array. And we need some kind of counter or index to track the current number that we're at. So we could say, so what we could do is we could say let count equal 0, and then while count is less than or equal to 100, we want to result.push count, and then we want to increment the current count. And let's actually start this at 1, because we are not looking for 0 here, we're wanting to start with 1. And so then we could run that, and we will see that that passes the tests, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way up to 100. All right, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to comment this out, and then let's do the same thing with a for loop. So we could say for let I equal 1, so we'll start at 1, and as long as I is less than or equal to 100, we want to say I plus plus, and then we'll do the same thing, result.push I. All right, there we go. All right, so that is how to write a for loop or a while loop to just perform a simple looping operation like this. And again, this is a very common thing to do in your programs for a variety of different reasons, and usually the for loop is a much more common construction to use rather than a while loop, but you will see both from time to time, and it's useful to be able to be comfortable writing these from scratch. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the next challenge. All right, so here we are in this next challenge, and in this challenge we're going to be basically doing the same thing I did a few challenges ago, which is using a break statement to exit out of a loop early to avoid doing more work. All right, so to do this, we're going to say for let I is equal to 0, I is less than the people array dot length, and then I plus plus. And then we're going to say if people at index I is equal to, and this is going to be people.job is equal to overriding the hard drive. So we are essentially looking for a person whose job is overriding the hard drive, like the test indicates here. If we find that person based on this if statement, then we want to say the index is equal to I. So we want to update this index in the outer scope to be the current index that we have here. And then if I run the tests, you'll see that we do pass the first 3 tests, but we haven't used the break statement yet. So let's use that and add the break statement here to say that once we have found this person, we can break out of this loop and we don't have to perform any more iterations. All right, so that is how to solve this challenge. And with that, let's jump to the next one. And I believe this is the last challenge. That's right, this is the last challenge, continuing a loop. Okay, so here we are in this last challenge, continuing a loop. And what we want to do here is we want to fill up this results array with all of the people whose name starts with a capital G. And this is going to be demonstrating the continue statement that we can use in a looping construction. So let's first use a for loop. So we can say for let I is equal to 0, I is less than people.length, and then I plus plus. We want to say const person is equal to people at index I. And let me just pull this up and make it a little bit bigger. And so then we want to say if person.name, and then we can use this method starts with G. We can use this nice built-in method on a string to figure out if the beginning of the string starts with a particular other string. Then what we want to do is we want to say results dot push person. All right, so this is going to solve the first 3 test cases, but not the 4th one. So the point of this challenge is to illustrate the continue statement, and continue is kind of like the break statement. It allows us to exert some specific control over a looping construct. So let me just add it in and then explain what it's doing. So I want to say if the person's name does not start with G, I want to continue. Now this will solve the challenge tests. And what this is doing is saying, if this condition is met, continue. And what that means is, in the context of this loop, we want to continue to the next iteration rather than proceeding to execute whatever other code is in the loop body. So essentially this will get to, let's say, the 5th person here, Grace Conroy, and it will say, or excuse me, it will get to the 1st person here, Nicole Nianao, and it will say their name does not start with a capital G, so just continue. So that will continue to the next iteration of the loop with Shannon Harris, and it will not execute any other code in the loop here. And you can imagine maybe there's a ton of other code in this loop body. Maybe there's like some kind of complex calculations and things like that, and you don't want to do any of that stuff if some particular condition is not met. So you could then say, if this condition is not met, then just continue. Just skip over to the next iteration of the loop and don't bother anymore with what's in the loop body here. So that is what the continue keyword does in the context of a looping structure, and it would work the same way in a while loop as it does a for loop, just like the break keyword. So with that, if we run the tests again, you'll see that this does pass the tests, and this is how we can build up a result array with all of the people whose name starts with G using the continue statement. All right, so that is going to be it for this video, and that was all of these challenges here on loops. And again, we covered while loops and for loops, and then various ways to create and kind of manage these looping structures. And these are the basic looping structures that you have available to use in TypeScript, and you will find very similar looping structures in other programming languages. All right, I hope you found this video useful and helpful. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in working on challenges like this one and learning to code, take a look at Pairwise. We have a ton of content here, which is intended to help you learn to code through interactive challenges just like this one, and also full kind of projects that you will build on your own computer and then deploy to build up a portfolio of projects. Okay, so with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll see you in the next video.